for coming. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, super. Let's make this a little larger. Okay, so we're going to take one item on the agenda first, and then we're going to go to all the residences. So if you just give us 1 minute. Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to step through that memo very quickly. Sometimes a few words helps. So very quickly, the Wayne Business Association approached the Board of Commissioners on March 25th regarding 3 projects they'd like to see occur. And the one that really interacts with what this commission does is the replacement of all the street trees in Wayne. So I provided some high-level conceptual prices to the board, and last night the board met on capital projects. So there was no specific decisions as to what capital projects, but a game plan was brought forth. There is a big list of capital projects. This project is on there, and the hope is to get the township to fund this. It was very clear early on, the Board of Commissioners, even if we use a consultant, which most likely we will, to do this design, very much wants the Shade Tree Commission and arborist input on species for these trees. So we have 2 more meetings coming up. That's when I assume these things will be discussed. I don't know. I can't tell you that, yes, this project will be approved, or if so, what date, but it's out there, and there seemed to be interest from the commissioners in this regard. So the project, it sounds very simple, but it's not, in the fact that, so I brought a tree contractor out, and literally, because of the way things are set up, for them to grind the stump out, we have to remove a sidewalk block so we can get his machine in there. There's also trees that have pushed up sidewalk blocks or broken the curb. So as part of this project, all those would be addressed, right? The sidewalk would be removed, tree pulled, tree cut, stump ground, new tree installed, whatever sidewalk and curbing required would be put back, and that's really specific to each location. One of the things was they didn't want to change locations, goes in the same spot. Also, the Wayne Business Overlay intersection enhancements, that's already started. So they asked, the Wayne Business Association asked to have the corners, the intersections, changed. If you look at them now, or previously, they had large river rock and really not much in the way of plant life. So my colleague, Steve McNellis, met with a contractor. The sketches were in your packet. They've already started on that. In most cases, all the river rocks removed. Topsoil was placed. I believe they started planning today. We're hoping to get a lot of that done before the Wheels of Wayne, which I hope you all attend on Sunday. I'll put the plug in for the Recreation and Community Program Department. Based on some of the emails and on this agenda, it's the Philippone Beauconnor Lamosone Tract update. We had an estimate for this work.
Hey, 1 second, Steve. So now you're going to a different topic, right?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Do you have any questions on the
Yeah, I would
other?
say let's pause. So what Steve is talking about is on the agenda under new business. So it's the whole Wayne business area and the plans there. So any questions from this group?
Steve, when do they need our recommendation for tree species by?
So hopefully the commissioners did ask last night when they would, if they approve this project, when it would have to be. It would have to be in May, because the way I laid it out in the memo was we want the trees in by September, by the end of September at the latest, and then the paving of all the parking lots is October. So the consultant's going to literally have to go location to location. So sometime this summer, I would have the consultant come here, present to this commission, hopefully maybe work with the subcommittee prior to that to get some species, then present to this committee and say, here's what we're looking at going at. We met with the subcommittee. We met with Mr. Hosbach. What other what other things do you wish we had, or do you want to change? And like I said in the one email, so it's more than just picking a tree. The way I look at it is, you're looking at an alley when you look down one of these streets, so you have to think of more than just this tree goes here. What is the visual when you go down? And as our arborist always says, it can't be one species. It's going to have to be a mix, so that if something, a blight comes upon us. But that would be sometime this summer. So if the board did approve this at the May 20-something meeting, I would hope to have a consultant on board by June. And that gives them about a month to get this done, because then we have to bid it and go from there. So this will be a bid project. It will be prevailing wages, just because it's 60 trees.
Okay, thanks.
And Steve, also, you mentioned that they want trees to go in existing pits. Will they also, is there a plan to create new pits where there's basically bare spots?
No, from what the WBA said, their request was relatively short and sweet. They said, remove the trees that are there, replace the trees that are there. I think they're looking at doing that also from, just getting this project done and sprucing up the area, and it's the quickest way. So they basically said, wherever there's a tree, remove it and replace it.
Okay.
I'm paraphrasing, but.
Okay. Okay. Would we be able to amend that when we review it?
I think we'd have to bring the WBA in on that.
Okay.
So right now, everybody, all the merchants there know where the trees are. And they know that a tree would come out and a tree would go in. If we start placing them in new locations, that could, and it's not a bit, might muddy the waters a little bit.
Okay.
Eileen, can I
Yes,
comment?
yeah, go right
I
ahead.
happen to be on the WBA board, so
Okay.
I think the WBA, I don't want to speak fully, but would love the input from John Hosback, the Township Shade Tree Commission, to find the best, as Steve said, Mr. Noisini said, to the best plan for replacement trees that are going to look good, last long, and be good for the WBA. So they're not married to pear trees, which is what,
Right.
at
Yeah.
one point, that was so they want our input, and they want to have the best plan possible.
Okay, super.
And I believe it's May 20th, which is,
That's what I said, I think that was the drop dead date.
Yeah.
That's the latest I can get a consultant on and get this thing bid out.
So Steve, does that mean we would look to review this at the May meeting? Right now, that's scheduled for May 15th. What would it be?
No,
ready
so
for
if
review
at the
by
May
then?
20th meeting, the board approves the project,
Oh, okay.
then I have the ability to go out and get a consultant. Still have to go back to the board with that consultant, so
Or
that
with
would
the
be
plan.
June. And then at that point, we would bring it in. So right
Okay.
now, in essence, there is no project, right? We don't know what it's going to look like. We got to give the consultant a little bit of time to then come to the subcommittee and finally this committee and say, working with the Shade Tree Commission, the arborist, here's what we're thinking. And of course, we're going to show that to the Wayne Business Association too.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. So we'll plan for sometime after May, that we would see it and give input. Okay, super.
One question?
Go ahead.
Steve, for the contractors, you said it's prevailing wage. Are you have to invite everybody to bid or certain contractors?
So if a project cost is under $25,000, prevailing wages aren't required, and the Board of Commissioners
Can approve it.
can approve that without a sealed bid. Once it goes over that, it becomes a sealed bid. We actually use an e-bidding site called PenBid. So that's open to everybody. And it's also prevailing wages when it goes over $25,000.
Could we invite the contractors that have signed up for the township list to do it?
So most contractors that do this work are on PenBid, so
Okay.
you get an email that says, hey, this new thing came on. But there is nothing wrong, and it's perfectly fine to tell contractors, hey, take a look at this project. You should go take a look at doing this.
Good enough to sign up, so
Oh, I agree.
a lot of them are local, too.
And we'd love to, if the lowest qualified bidder was local, that's fantastic.
Okay, good.
I'll get that guy.
We heard that, John. Okay. So any other questions on the new business, the Wayne business area? James? Okay. Okay, great. So Steve, I think you want to now move to old business?
Right, so there's an agenda item in old business called Philippone, Beauconnor, La Maison tract update.
Yep.
Objective, estimate provided, align on next steps to pursue grant funds. So I just wanted to talk about that process a little bit. So I did request that this project, the dollar amount, be on the capital list. So it is there. I don't know if it's going to get funded, right? So just because it's on the list does not mean the commissioners will fund it. If the commissioners don't fund it, there is no project. Now, let's say it is funded and we wish to pursue a grant. So all grants have to go through the Board of Commissioners for a couple of reasons. They need to know what grants are being applied for. In most cases, a resolution from the commissioners is required as part of the grant submission. And also in most cases, there's a matching funds requirement, and the board also says, we're willing to match, to put our 10, 20, 30% in, so it has to go before the board. So I just wanted to make sure that the Shade Tree Commission realized the timeline can be really tight. So if a grant is due August 10th, our work's got to be done well before July, because there's only one meeting a month in the summer. You're going to have the application complete, all the work done, then we go to the board in July and say, will you allow us to do this grant? There's a resolution, and then you could submit. So there is a timeline, and that timeline revolves around the Board of Commissioners meetings. Now, there's another thing. Maybe the project doesn't get funded this year. So we really don't have anything to move on unless you can get a grant that's, 100%, or maybe you could entice them to say, hey, we can get 90%. But if the project doesn't get funded this year, we're really kind of dead in the water in that respect.
Okay, and how much is the estimate for?
I forget what it was. I think it was $30-some thousand.
32,000.
Yeah, I took the exact number and plugged it in.
I would say that's something that probably should come back to us, because $30,000 would be about 30% of our budget. So we'd have to decide, is that how we want to utilize our budget?
Right, and so by our emails, I had said, hey, I'm going to plug this in. If you want me to remove it, absolutely, that's not a problem. We're working on that capital plan until we meet in a couple weeks. So if you don't, I took from the emails and this, that you wanted to do that project. To be able to even think of doing the project, it's got to get on the plan to get funded.
Yep.
If it's not on the plan, it doesn't exist.
I have a question. Mr. Norsini, who writes that grant, if we can even?
Well, that was one of my other items.
That's us.
So a lot of times, depending on the complexity of the grant, like our grants that we go for, a lot of them are for big stormwater projects, intersections. So usually we tap the designer who has all the information at hand, and with staff, we supplement some things, but most of the technical items. So that was one of the other items in there. It's a great question. Depending on the complexity of the grant, we don't have a staff grant writer.
Yeah,
So most likely I would ask, if the commission is willing,
right.
you can do it at Starbucks. I've seen the chair there many a time, or actually it's a different place, but
The Bagel Factory.
the Bagel Factory that closed. If it's not a real detailed grant, some of the smaller grants really aren't. You have a plan, you have costs, and you outline the benefits of it, and you just basically, a lot of them are actually form fill that you do online.
Does anyone have any experience in grant writing on our committee?
No, but it is something that we talked about last year in talking to other shade tree committees in other townships, that it's a way that they get money. And so it is definitely something we'd like to pursue. So I think it's great that we have this estimate. I think the next step would be to go see, can we get grant funds for it? Maybe we could even cover half of it.
I'd like to see that move forward, especially since the bid seems reasonable and manageable. And if we put it,
Let me talk about that bid. So I apologize, but since it's over $25,000, we're actually going to, that's a great thing to show us the magnitude of the cost, but we'd actually have to bid that out because the board just can't award that $32,000 project. So either we reduce the scope to get it under 25,000, and then if you wish to do it, the board. But if we did get a grant, and if the project was funded and we did get a grant and the boards and the commission says, let's go do this, we would actually have to bid it because it's over $25,000. We couldn't use that proposal. That was really, that shows us the magnitude of the cost of the work.
I still think it's worth at least pursuing if we should go into the grant. And if we have to scale it back to 25,000, I think it's time.
Yeah, for me, I even think it's fine if we competitively bid it out. If you competitively bid it out, it could come under 25. I don't have an issue with that. But I do see, go ahead, James.
I would go a separate way.
Go ahead.
I think it's, if it goes over 25, you're going to get a company that's probably not going to do as good a job as the township contractor that they use. I would try to get money, 15,000, something like that. See what the contractor can do in the wintertime when they're slow and get what you can done. Say 5 days work, 3 days work, whatever,
Okay.
for a certain amount.
Oh,
I
so
think you'll
maybe
get
Mm-hmm.
your
do like a-
best bang for your buck if you want to.
And maybe the
Get it.
winter time is when you do it when the vines are not growing, because you can't even get in there when it, I don't
Yeah.
know.
So James,
So-
I hear you
I mean-
suggesting kind of like a phase 1, phase 2. Maybe instead of
Ye-
asking the Board of Commissioners for 30,000, ask them for 50%.
Yeah, I don't see it getting done cleared the way people want it for 30,000. I don't think it's going to happen. So I think it would be kind of a waste. I think if you put the money to a contractor we use and tell them we want 5 days or something like this to get, yeah, see what we can do. It's a big project.
Yeah.
And we could do that. So if it's under the $25,000, Mr. Gibbons has a perfectly workable plan. I'm going to say, for instance, we use Horgan for a lot of things. We could say, okay, what is your crew rate? Here's the work we want done. For 1 week, you know, with some good productivity, blah, 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 it's X dollars, and then we could go to the board with that if you wish. But again, we just have to watch the funding levels of things, especially if it becomes capital. But that's a viable option in doing this project, and that's really what this committee is going to decide. You know, how much do you want to spend? Do you want to do it incrementally? Where do you want to start? And, you know, we say La Maison, but we don't have the authority to go on their property. So in the beginning, we should stick on Township Park property, whether it be Beau Connor or Philip and Warren, Philip and Park.
Isn't that area in jeopardy of coming all down if we don't do something, Mr. Hosback? I mean, in places in the township where vines have taken over, is that one of the most severe?
I would say it's up there with, we have a couple other ones, but unfortunately, what's occurring there is there's a lot of dead trees that reside on that property. So it's not just vine removal, it's also risk removal, hazard trees, and then replanting to establish the forest.
Do you think it's worth it, John, to put that kind of money into it?
Do I think it's worth it? In the long term, yes. With all the other projects we have coming up, no.
Good.
So would you suggest clear cutting it and then starting over with?
I think we need to look into it a little bit more detail. There's a lot of issues. Stormwater management, there's some issues there for sure.
What we could do, maybe, if I could suggest, if you folks, if 2 or 3, whether it be a subcommittee or just 2, myself and John can meet you out there. And, I mean, we all know what it looks like when you drive by or if you're at the park. But if we walk back there, I think it is eye-opening as to what's going on there. And then John can say, look at this tree, look at this tree, look at these vines. Maybe it'll enlighten us and he'll have some different options for us.
To me, I must admit, I think that sounds like the best plan, because I'm a little concerned if we invest 30,000 to clear that, it will just grow back or we won't even make a dent in it. So I myself, I'm in favor of coming up with options. One could be to do the 30,000, one could be to clear cut, one could be to do, I don't know, something different.
If a few of us, and I would ask Mr. Gibbons to come because it's his business, another, you know, very knowledgeable person, if we go out there and then come back to this committee, and then you can formulate, based on what you saw, the input you get from the 2 arborists, here's a good way to go, here's how much money you should spend if you want to spend the money.
Right, right.
It's a lot more than just divining.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds that way. Okay, so do we have two folks that would like to volunteer to join? I see Claire,
Yeah,
which
I'll
makes
stay on
sense.
that since I have
Since you have
been wor-
parks.
Well, no, I've been working on this piece for, I mean, we've walked that, 2 years ago? So I'll be
Okay.
happy to stay on that with Jim.
James, you could? Okay, great. So we'll have James and Claire team up with John and Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, super.
So am I hearing that we want to ask the capital, to take it off of the capital project consideration then?
I will, if that's,
Yes.
it's great that we have the committee here, so if you want me to ask Mr. White, the finance director, to pull that, that's great.
Yeah, Ginny, good clarification. Yes, let's pull that back. We'll outline the options, and then we'll decide what to take forward and ask for funding. Okay, super.
So the last item I wanted to talk about was Resolution 2019-37, where the 2019 spring tree planting contract was awarded to All Seasons Landscaping in the amount of $38,500 for 70 trees. So we, again, we have a tight timeline. So when I wrote the contract, I consulted with the arborist, and he said, you know, these trees need to be in the ground by June 15th. May 1 is tomorrow, I believe. So we have to give this contractor not just time to plant them, but to acquire the trees. So we're going to have to come up with our lists of not just people or places or township, whatever it is. We're lucky we have our park board representative here. If there's parks you wish to go to, I'd request that we bring Tammy Cohen in, or on the loop. She has the pulse on all our parks. She knows what's going on all them. But John, I'm going to ask you or Mr. Gibbons, so if you had 70 trees to get in the ground and it had to be done by June 15th, when would you be procuring those trees to get that done? So I guess, yeah, what I'm saying is very limited time. I'm going to ask John, I mean, 2 weeks is the max to pick not just the residents that wrote in, but where else other properties that you wish to. I'm assuming they're all township properties.
And I can assist with that as well.
Okay.
So we'll be reaching out to the contractor tomorrow to say, hey, you know, you got the award, they provided a bid bond, and we'll bring them in. I will need, I guess, from Leah, this part of the project really goes back to Public Works, the list of the people, and very quickly, the list of the township property. And like I say, I need to bring Tammy Cohen in on that because she is the parks.
Okay. So, Steve, just a few questions. What was the name of the company to whom the contract was awarded?
All Seasons Landscaping.
Okay.
So there was another contractor, but they only bid the 35 trees.
Okay.
So they did not submit a bid for the 70. So whether they would have been cheaper doesn't matter because they didn't submit the bid. And with a sealed bid, we don't have the ability to call up and say, hey, what's your price?
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. And so basically, we're saying that the locations for these trees, whether it's parks or residents, need to be identified by, are you saying in 2 weeks, by mid-May?
I'm saying, I mean, I would like to say in like 10 days.
At the max.
I'm not exactly following why. Why does it need to be done
Because they
in
need to
10
be in the
days?
ground by June 15th.
Right?
And this contractor needs to get nursery stock. And they're not just going to walk up on June 1st and say, they're buying a lot of trees.
Yeah.
They're not going to, there's already going to be issues with species acquisition. There's probably going to be some changes.
Yeah.
So,
But if we identify the types of trees so that the contractor can go acquire them, can we have a little bit more time to confirm the locations?
still got to give them time to plant 70 trees. I don't know how many a day they're, a lot depends on how far apart these residents are. And, the good thing is access is there, you pull up, do what you have to do. So I don't know how many trees per day, but let's say they plant 10 trees per day, that's still 7 working days without rain.
How many residents have signed up?
Last I looked, it was about, I believe, 30, maybe 32, somewhere in there, 28, 32.
John, did your church ever sign up? You were talking about the church wanted a few.
They did, yes.
Oh, so they're already on the
Yes,
list?
correct. So between Parks, St. David's Church, Parks Church, I have about 22 trees needed.
Oh, so that's in addition to the 30 that signed up from the residents?
That's correct.
Okay,
Do you
great.
have some from Tammy on Parks?
No, I just know where they need to go in Parks, so I can just relay that over to Tammy.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely, yep.
So Trish gave me, before the meeting, a question from one of the residents is if they could have more than one tree, because there isn't really a mechanism right now for them to sign up for more than one. It's one per resident, basically, on that application form. So I'm presuming it's okay for a resident to have more than one. And her other question is, can she plant it somewhere other than right on the street?
No. So it has to be, the idea is to regreen the township so that all the residents can enjoy it. So no, it has to be along the street, along their property edge.
It was always in the right-of-way, in a township
I
street
know that's how we
right-of-way.
started out, but I just need
Yeah.
an answer for her.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let her know, thanks. So to follow up that then, Trish, I guess we should tell Leah to cut off any signups, 10 days from now, gentlemen?
I think we need to figure that out. Because what I'm thinking is, if the contractor needs 7 days to plant, just as long as we start planting by May 31st, that would give us 2 full weeks. So we should be okay there. And we could acquire the trees.
May 15th.
May 15th will be the cutoff for the.
Yeah, so
That's a-
that would give us at
that's
least
a good 2
full
weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, it's
So I
2 more
think
weeks.
that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yep,
Okay, Trish, we'll let Leah know May 15th. Thanks.
great.
Okay, just a quick question here. If enough residents don't sign up, we do have enough park space to go and put these trees, correct? Especially with the emerald ash borer, we could just proactively place them. So we're not at a risk of losing the 70s.
That is
Correct.
correct, and I was just speaking with Steve here. A lot of those 30 that came in, I'm going to have to review them, because if there's overhead utilities, obviously they're not going to be able to get a tree.
Unless
So-
it's a small tree.
Unless it's one of the
That's-
smaller
yeah.
trees. But, unfortunately, we're looking for canopy coverage, so a lot of those will have to be moved, maybe to a neighbor, if that's agreed upon. But I feel a lot of these trees are going to be allocated towards the parks where I feel we need them the most.
Like several years ago, we removed 20-some trees from Hartford Park, right? That our arborist did a risk assessment. So Chrome Park, one year I removed quite a few of the pines along the fence. So I think, again, we need to include Tammy, we need to include Claire, but the arborist has some good ideas for infill. I don't think we're going to struggle planting these trees in appropriate spaces where they're going to make a difference.
Okay. I do think, though, we want to keep in mind when we wrote the master shade tree charter, we said that we wanted to prioritize the streets, and then second priority was the parks, and we wanted to do the bare areas, like Garrett Hill, that, is in more need of greening than other areas in the township. So I think we just keep that in mind. But either way, I think, yes, we go all the way up to the 70, and we use the parks to do that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anything else, Steve?
No,
Can I make
ma'am.
one
Thank you
suggestion?
for,
Yeah, go ahead,
I was gonna-
James.
Instead of May 15th, I think it's going to be an issue.
Okay.
If we tell them to buy the trees May 15th or order them. I think we should do it beforehand. We're going to get the worst trees. That means they're going to get the worst stock.
So what we could do is, we can identify an earlier date to order the trees, but
Well,
finalize the locations
I
on
would
the
say,
15th.
when you call them up to say you have the contract, we know we're going to be able to plant them in a park somewhere if we don't get rid of them. So tell them to order the trees now. We have space to put them, and we should know by May 15th or May 20th where
so
they're going.
Mr. Gibbons, I'm going to ask you, will the nursery make them take delivery, or will they just be placing an order? Because I don't know if the contractor has room for 70 trees.
No, they should be able to order the trees
And keep them at the nursery?
At the nursery. They'll hold them for them.
Okay, and basically, we would take, I'm going to bring John in on this conversation, because I think right away there's going to be some issues with species. So,
Yeah.
John can make the call if the person says, I want
Yeah,
to switch it.
it's going to be hard now
Yeah.
probably to get some of the trees, I think, to get
Yeah.
that amount. I don't think that, yeah,
Yeah, and Yeah, John, I think you know what we're gearing towards. Kind of half small, half large, and then a mixed species. And we named the 6 species that we wanted, but it's fine to have substitutes.
We have Plan B in place.
Fantastic, let's do it. Okay, so we'll allow, in summary, we'll allow the trees to go ahead and be ordered now. A lot of it will be based on nursery availability, but keeping in line with what we originally scoped out. And we'll identify the locations by May 15th, a mix of residents and parks. And I think, is there anything else? I think that's about right. Okay,
Thank you very much.
okay, great. Thanks, Steve. Okay, thank you so much for your patience. Now, let's get to the resident properties. First one up is 301 Windsor Avenue, 1 tree to be removed.
Good evening. Brian Madsen from Omni. We're here for 301 Windsor Avenue. Yeah, like you said, the proposed project involves the removal of one 10-inch maple tree. The plan includes the addition of a new detached garage and some other driveway and walkway improvements and the associated stormwater management facilities. While the code doesn't require tree replacements for one tree removal, we do have a landscape architect here to discuss the landscape plan
Okay.
if needed.
Yeah, so you're essentially here because of the amount of soil that you're removing. That's the trigger point.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So then, I think it's wonderful that you're replacing the one tree, even though it's a 10-inch maple. I would say our primary concern will be if you can show us the existing trees and how you're protecting them and like your egress pattern. Those are the things that we would look at. And if you just let us know what sheet you're turning to there, we'll follow
All right.
along.
Yeah, we're on sheet 3 right here, the erosion and sedimentation control plan. This lot has frontage on both Windsor Avenue and Banbury Way. Construction or access to the site can be from either road. So there is some new paving back in this corner. This is where the 10-inch maple tree is being removed. There are a couple of, there's also a large wall, or not a large wall, but there is a wall in place right along the property boundary. So there are 2 trees to remain in between the wall and the new paving. Our intent is to place some tree protection fencing and attempt to save those 2 trees. In the front of the property, I guess, in this location is where we have our new underground stormwater system. An outlet pipe from the system will connect to the existing inlet in Windsor Avenue. There's a 24-inch cherry tree in the vicinity of that proposed outlet pipe. We're protecting that tree with tree protection fencing.
Okay, and that's your blue hash marks
The
that you're
blue
showing
hash
us.
marks
yeah.
are the tree protection, yes.
Okay. And your egress patterns into the property to do the work?
Well, they have access from both Banbury Way, so they can,
Yeah.
there's an existing driveway that currently connects from Banbury up through the site out to Windsor Avenue. So access into the site can be through either of the existing driveways.
Okay. Okay, from what I can see, you have tree protection fencing around all the existing trees. I don't see any heritage trees that would require any other special protection. And your egress using the existing driveway looks okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the offer to share your landscaping plan, but we'll save you some time, and I'm sure it looks lovely. So thank you. Approved.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Next up is 607 King of Prussia. It says 0 trees to be removed and only 40 cubic yards of dirt to stay on site. So I'm not sure what the trigger is that brings you here. Okay.
Okay, so, plan we have here, we are proposing at 607.
Sir, can you just introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, and if you don't mind speaking into the microphone there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
I am Mike Ciccio from Aristo Pool and Spa, okay, and this is Mrs. Vanessa Krekel.
Okay.
We are here today because she'd like to put a swimming pool in her yard. So we have a proposed plan with the swimming pool and stormwater management on it. Our access is going to be coming up their driveway, right here. And then we will be coming in, right off the property here, as you can see where our limited disturbance is. We will have tree protection around this magnolia that is here, right here, tree fencing protection. And there is also tree fencing protection along the back of the property right here, where that 36-inch poplar is. We are about, on this plan, it scales off to be about 44 feet away from that 36-inch poplar that's in that tree line. So again, the reason we're here is because of the tree protection fencing.
And I'm sorry, for me, it's hard to see it on this drawing. Can you point it out again? Can you point out both the tree protection fencing and the heritage tree?
Yes, the heritage tree is right here,
Just hang on a
and
second.
the tree protection fencing is right here.
Okay, that's okay. Thanks, Trish.
And
Okay.
also, right here.
I did have a chance to review it today. They're definitely in compliance. They're not going to be
Okay.
within the tall poplar range, so they're fine.
Okay. Okay, that sounds fine. Any questions? Okay, we appreciate you coming in. I should say all in favor? Aye. Approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck with your project. Okay.
Tell Bascom he's welcome.
And then, hey, Trish, I just wanted to let you know, if you couldn't find the bamboo ordinance, I emailed it to you. Just now, as I was sitting here, I emailed it to you in case you couldn't find it. Just the proposed bamboo ordinance. Okay. Next up, it seems like you already know, welcome, 112 Harvard Lane. I think you have been here before.
Yes, yes. Patrick Spellman with Site Engineering Concept, Christy Flynn, Rockwell, sitting behind me. Yeah, you've seen this street a couple times over the last several months.
Yep.
Last time we were here in January, we presented this overall plan prepared by Glack and Thomas Panzak. What's before you today is Lot 42, 112. It's down in this corner of the street. So there is no proposed change from this landscape plan, the approved landscape plan. It's kind of the same story that I've been telling for the last several months. They're coming in here. They've cleared out a lot of the trees. This is one of the few lots where we're trying to save some trees down in the corner by the floodplain. Building a house, rain garden, tree protection fencing along these trees that we're looking to save. about the size of it.
Okay. On the agenda, it says 15 trees being removed. Is that
Right.
correct?
So if you see down here are the trees that are being removed. The X's don't show up very well, but
That's okay.
these are the ones that are being removed in this area here, which would be correspond to the area of the house.
And that was-
rain garden.
That was on the last plan too, the removals? was
Yeah,
that-
yeah, so the,
That was all added up and everything before? Yeah.
so on the,
And Matt and I actually looked at these trees,
Mm-hmm.
Matt Golis and I, so this is actually a benefit to the township, for sure.
yeah.
Bad.
To remove them
Yeah,
or the
it's-
replacement?
They're in bad shape.
Okay.
It's-
Yeah, I'm
it's a
sorry, I
very
guess I should
degraded
have
site.
rehashed, I didn't want to rehash, but yeah, this,
No.
you know, in the 80s, this was clear cut in preparation for development. It never happened. It sat there for 20, 30 years until Rockwell came in. Just a viney mess sitting out there.
Okay. So I'm trying to piece together where the table is of the trees being removed and the trees being replaced.
So I would go to, again, we were basically using the Glack and Thomas Panzak plan as the approved plan. So this is an approved clearing plan for the entire street.
Yeah.
So this is the plan that governs what's being removed and what's being replaced. In fact, I was under the impression that by getting the clearing permit for the entire street with this Glock and Thomas Panzak plan, that as long as we stuck to that plan, we were basically good. That the lot 42 in effect, the plan for lot 42 in effect has been approved. We're just now.
So this is similar to our Drossen, where they've already been approved, the trees have been removed, but every time they go to put up another house, they have to come in front of us. It's kind of,
That's yeah. Go ahead.
Can you, we were under the impression that we would be, like, complying with this would not require further appearances here. It's difficult for us to come over and over where there's a timing problem for us. So how do we have it approved without being here again and again to say the same thing?
the logistics behind that, but we'd have to ask Mr. Norsini how that works, because that's out of the shade tree and the consulting arborist's realm. Yep. But he can definitely answer that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, or maybe I take that as an action item to talk to Steve, because I do agree with Lynn, that's not the most efficient use of everyone's time, because it sounds like you've already gotten a clearing permit, and now you're doing an
The
entire
trees
development.
trees are gone.
Right, and then to come here each time to build a home doesn't seem to make the most sense.
And exactly, and if we would, for instance, have to make a change to what we had previously discussed,
Yeah.
that makes a ton of sense to me to have to come back and talk about it again. But we're doing exactly what we've talked about before, and then we'll do again what we talked about.
I don't believe they should have to come in front of us again.
Yeah.
But there's something within, the development ordinance that says they have to come each time. Eddie Scott has to come every time something's going on at our Drossen, so.
How
To the
many,
shade tree?
how many houses have been built?
Well, the question is how many grading permits have been issued, isn't it, Patrick?
So we
Yeah.
have 4, 5,
Yeah. So-
6. Did we get 4?
No, I don't think so.
So six of the 14 have been issued. This is number 7 you're looking at, lot 36. Have we been here for lot 36? We just got the review down, so,
Yeah.
I don't either.
Okay, but more importantly, it'll be the same replacement formula for each house going forward, correct?
Correct. So this plan did a replacement formula for each lot. Regardless of the house that's going on, the overall grading plan is what drove the tree replacement.
Yeah.
And the fact that the trees are invasive and junk.
Yeah, so I have 2 ideas here. I would say, one, that we motion to approve this plan without them coming back to revisit. And second, Joe, with you being in charge of the ordinance, with regards to updating that this year, that we take this into consideration, that we lower the bar for triggering people to have to come before us and ask approval if they're simply removing dirt or something like this case, where you're doing an entire development. Okay. Okay, so motion to approve the plan as is and not return.
Thank you.
Not that we don't like you, but we wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you.
all. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Eileen, we're going to have to follow up, though, with Mr. Norsini,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I'll have
Because-
to follow up with Steve to find out exactly what the trigger is, and then I'll feed that into Joe, and we can look at that in our ordinance. How do we remove that trigger? Let me get to the agenda. Okay, you must be 233 Ashwood Road.
Correct.
Okay, super.
Good. Michael Cooley, resident at 233 Ashwood. I'm here with my engineer, CJ Bach from Bowler Engineering.
Okay.
We're here tonight because we're excavating off more than 40 yards of dirt from my property.
Okay.
My engineering plans have been reviewed and approved by the township reviewing engineer.
Okay, super. So then the only thing we would need to see is if you can show us the existing trees and how you're protecting them and the egress pattern to enter the property.
We prepared an erosion control plan for the construction, wherein with the assistance of the township reviewing engineer.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
And if you can just tell us what page you're on, we'll follow along.
Sure, I am on page
Or
6.
sheet, I should say.
Sheet 6 of 9. I did notice that in your guys' packet, you have revision 1 plans. We are
Okay.
on revision 3. That was the latest revision.
Okay,
Unfortunately, the most recent revision is where we added the tree protection fencing at the request of the reviewing engineer.
okay, so we
so-
won't see that here.
I have
Eileen.
this right.
Eileen, so the plans were submitted, the revision plans were submitted well beyond the date for this meeting. So that's why you have the original plans.
Yep, and that's okay, but I think if we can follow along with what you're telling us, we will look to approve or comment. Okay.
So we have some existing trees here on the north side of the property that we're proposing to protect along the proposed driveway with a tree protection fence here. There's a small group of trees in this corner where we're also protecting with tree protection fence wrapping around here behind the back of this.
Can you move the mic?
Sorry. There's another tree here in the lower southwest corner that we're protecting this entire edge here with some additional tree protection fencing. And then there are some larger species in the backyard where we're also protecting them with some tree protection fencing.
Okay, great. And I think I see the tree. And then how do you enter and exit the property to do the work?
This plan actually shows the proposed construction entrance, and
Right
it's in
down
the
here?
same spot as the ultimate proposed driveway.
Okay. That's good. Any questions from anyone?
No trees are coming out,
No,
just moving dirt.
just some dirt.
That's been the
The
theme
excavate-
tonight.
We have we're proposing a rain garden in the back corner here, which we have a litany of plantings that we're proposing in the back corner here for this rain garden. We're also proposing some shade trees along the frontage here to meet the street tree requirements. So it should be a very pretty plan.
Yeah. Any questions? No? Okay, motion to approve? Aye. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay. Okay, so guys, that concludes our residents and the properties to review. So let me just to close this out. Okay. Trish, thank you. So, number 5, there's no trees removed without clearing permits, no violation notices. We've already done old and new business when Steve was here, number 8 and 9, hazardous trees. Whoops. Sorry, I skipped over number 7, the meaty portion, shade tree goals. So let's go there. Let me just close things down. Okay. Shade tree goals. So the first one, we'll cover those in bold, and the red are the previous action items. The first one was about the master street tree charter. And we actually already covered that because we did the update with Steve, so I think we're in good shape there regarding the contract awarding and the timeline to identify the location. So good job there. The one thing I do want to ask, Ginny, you did a great job with the communication. I know that's on the website. We talked about putting that on Facebook. It's going, the advertisement, I think, comes out this week.
The ad ran.
Oh, good.
For
Okay.
anybody who didn't see it, I can pass it down. It's
Yeah.
got
Oh, that
nice
looks great.
placement at the top of the page, nice
Okay.
size for our dollars.
Super. That looks very good, and that helps with awareness, and we have a full 2 weeks still
Yeah.
to let people sign up, so that's great. Great. Yeah. But I do think if there's anything else we can do to help get the word out with residents, we could either, go ahead, Ginny.
In general, is that what you're talking about? Not specifically for this tree planting, just in general?
Well, I was talking actually about the tree planting right now, if there's anything we can do to generate more interest amongst the residents.
I did place flyers. I think I don't know if everybody was on the email chain, but, in the Wawa, in the library, Starbucks. I mean, do any of you have local churches or know of any community billboards anywhere that you could post those flyers? I know the commissioners sent it out in their newsletters.
Yeah, I posted some flyers, just giving them to my neighbors, put them in their mailboxes. I don't know if it's too late to do this. I see the signs that are up around the kitchen tour, I think for Radnor, it almost looks like an open house sign. I don't know if we do signs like that. Would that get more interest and more residents signing up?
What are they, picket?
Yeah,
Stuck in the
they look
ground
just like,
ones? Oh.
they look just like a realtor sign that they would
Oh.
have up and be in the ground. And right now, sometimes they have them for races. Right now, they happen to be up for the Radnor kitchen tour.
Oh, okay. By the time we would get those done, we only got a 10-day window here. By the time I think
For
we
a
would get
2-week
them.
window, yeah.
We would, get those created.
Yeah.
I think that would use up our time.
Yeah. It may be
Um,
something to consider for the fall planting even, because we could print up signs that we could use for spring or fall. Like, it doesn't have to say spring or fall on it. It could just be, hey, go,
True.
go to the website
Yeah.
and get a free street tree.
Yeah.
How about
planted,
the,
something like that.
at the Art Center on the trail?
Oh, the Wayne Arts Center.
There's a-
Oh, is there a
there's-
billboard in there?
There is.
Yeah,
Okay.
there is. Yeah, it's-
I put one at the farmer's market.
Oh, that's great.
Or Mainline School Night, that's another good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, at the
I'm just trying to
Kreuzberg
think of
Center, is that what you're
people who-
thinking? Oh, okay.
How do you pronounce it?
I say Kreuzberg, maybe is it? Okay, good.
You guys, I'm a little disappointed. I thought, I was very naive. I would think that they would go instantly. And I'm really shocked that they did not.
Well,
But-
I actually think
I
it
think it's
dovetails with the,
advertising.
and also with the Conservancy, I think people are confused, they think it's the same thing. So
Yeah,
that's-
I thought the same thing, Claire, and I also thought that it restricts people by putting them in the right of way, instead of just putting them anywhere on your property. So,
But I do agree with what Clara said, because I had a neighbor tell me, oh, I signed up for 2 trees. She meant she signed up for 2 Conservancy trees. She didn't realize there was a difference, because it does happen to be around the same time. So that's why I think if we can do some more advertising and drive traffic to the website, then there will be a greater awareness and people will sign up.
Right. I mean, let's face it, we all have a very limited time in our lives. It's almost like we need to go door to door, or someone has a knock on the door of a hazard tree that was removed and it wasn't, they didn't do a replacement tree. But none of us have the time. So we have to rely on.
I'm not terribly bothered if all the residents don't sign up for it, because we have so many needs in the parks that as long as we get 70 trees planted somewhere in the township, I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Me too, Ginny.
Ginny, you said Facebook, it's moving, I mean, there is an ad on Facebook?
Yeah,
Okay.
right, Trish? Yeah.
There is, I saw it.
Oh, you
Yeah,
can see
it's
it.
my understanding that
And people are sharing it.
he put it out everywhere.
Yeah.
And then, as I was letting you know this tonight, that I was informed that one of the HOAs actually has a website, and they put it on their website.
That's the one at Trianon, for anybody who knows that development over there. Yeah, that was really nice of them. Yeah, so if anybody else lives in a HOA community, that's a thought too. Or knows friends.
Yeah.
Like Lissitor, maybe?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
Lissitor.
There is one. Oh, that's not Radnor.
Township.
Which one?
Inverary
Yes.
is what I was thinking.
You know anybody that lives there? Neither.
Okay. Well, I think we stay the course. I can even try looking to see if we did print up signs, could they be ready for the spring, or could they be ready for the fall? And maybe we get some awareness that way, in addition to all the good work that Ginny has done, posting them
yeah.
in public places.
And particularly Garrett Hill, is the commissioner from that area, are they beating the drum for this? You know, where you have no trees, are they spreading the word?
What's that?
The commissioner from Garrett Hill just
Oh,
peeked
is-
in a little while ago.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta admit, because I didn't see any, I don't get a commissioner's letter, so
It's
I
on his.
email, so I don't
Is it on
even
his?
see.
It's on his, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
All right, well, that's good.
It's on Lisa Borowski's, his,
Good.
not sure who else.
Yeah, I didn't see one on Rich Booker's either. I specifically asked him because he's my,
He has-
yeah, I don't think he has a newsletter,
But
but I
you know
asked him to
what?
put the flyer out just as a separate thing.
Yeah.
I think
I
we
can-
should just see how things go in the next 10
Yeah.
days. I bet you they'll be all gone. We won't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
And then if, we're not going to get signs in the next 2 weeks, so just, because we have to do
Yeah.
a purchase order
Right,
next
oh,
month.
right,
So just see how
right.
it goes, and then we'll be able to lose them in the parks.
Mm-hmm,
And
Yeah.
then for next year, then, or the fall, then.
right.
I would suggest, like Claire said, if we're going to do this again this spring, let's not do it on top of the conservancies, because I think that a lot of the people that wanted to plant trees may have gone that direction.
And that's okay. I mean, it's all a win.
It's
Just
all a
long as
win,
the trees
right.
get planted, we don't care where they come from, just
Yeah.
as long as they go in the ground somewhere in
Right,
Radnor. It's all
exactly.
good.
Exactly.
So, but I think, yeah, if I get
Well,
time,
as
I'll
far
try
as-
and go over to Garrett Hill and hand out some flyers, because that area does need a little bit of help there. So,
Well, as
okay.
far as our goals, do you want me to sort of start focusing on additional advertising, like just getting the word out about shade tree in general? Or does anybody have any input on any other awareness that we should be doing? I mean, we haven't really published or done anything with that flyer that we had, I've forgotten her name
Right.
now. You know, the original
Right.
one with our logo on it.
I think I'm looking down under communications, that's why I'm asking, that's under number 3 there. And I think we talked about, what was next up is the invasive plant roster. How do we make people aware of invasive plants, and possibly posting that on the website? I- Correct, correct, by the Radnor Conservancy. Yep, yep. And then the other thing that we were trying to do around communication to help the residents is make sure Steve McNeilis in Public Works has a list of all the hazardous trees that we've picked up over our survey, so that if they're not in the right of way, those residents can be notified, hey, do you happen to know you have a hazardous tree? Here are certified contractors that could remove it for you, because there may be neighbors that don't even know. So the whole idea of like, how do we keep folks safe?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the 2 main things we had going on. I think if we were to communicate otherwise, we'd have to decide, okay, what's the call to action? What is it that we want people to do with whatever communication we put out there? So I think we'd have to give that some thought.
Okay,
Maybe maybe in gearing up for the fall planting.
okay.
Okay. Okay, so anything else under number 1? Okay, sounds good. Okay, so now we're on to keep the ordinance current and effective. Joe, I know this is your overall initiative, but we'll go with the bamboo. That's what we wanted to talk about now, and this is what Trish just printed out for us. Okay, so what we're looking for here is an agreement to the content. If we agree with the content, then this would go to the BOC for approval, and it would become, I believe, an amendment to our current ordinance. Okay, so I'll give everybody a minute to read it, or a few minutes.
I believe this was the draft that I did on March 26th, is that correct?
It is, and
Okay.
then with the added in, right, rationale.
Yep.
And then 10 feet.
Yep.
Yep.
I have a couple questions. So, do we know what kind of barriers, John, that they would need to put in to prevent it from spreading to the neighbors? Because I understand it's pretty hard to keep it from spreading, right?
There's about 5 different types of barriers. It's all dependent upon the location of, and the soil conditions at the property. So a lot of them use biobarrier, which is a fabric that has little impregnated, little like bumps on it, and it has herbicide in it. The bamboo rhizomes hit it, and they deter and go away. That's in a best case scenario. Worst case scenario, where it's very invasive, you're gonna have to actually trench and pour concrete,
Wow.
and that has to go sometimes down to 5 feet.
So should we put some language in here to the effect of shall provide barriers as recommended by the township arborist? Because they're not going to know.
We got to be careful with that, only for the mere fact this is all private property. We are not guiding them. We are setting an ordinance that they can't have bamboo. They can't have bamboo within 10 feet. It is their obligation and their job to manage it, not us. Because if we make a recommendation and it does not work, then we
We're
are on the hook.
liable.
Yes,
Yeah, 'cause
Gotcha.
they could always talk to a nursery or a landscaper or look online.
correct.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Claire, go ahead.
Has anyone come to us for support,
For support,
for bamboo? You know, do people who now know, not everybody knows that it's so invasive until then you're living with it, and then all of a sudden.
But we have had people come
Yeah.
who are neighbors of people who have bamboo and
Right.
said, hey, this is an issue, we would like this contained, is there any type of ordinance? So in that regard, we do have people asking for it.
So
it's
neighbors.
it's gonna be really hard. What I feel that the benefit of this ordinance amendment is going to prevent people from planning it. People that already have it, it's going to really be hard for us to manage that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But I do think it helps if you are an adjacent neighbor and you're not a fan of the bamboo, it definitely says, okay, look, I have an ordinance, you need to contain this on your property, and it needs to be 10 feet off my
Absolutely.
property. So I think it helps, and hopefully the idea behind this, and the whole reason you have the first paragraph up there, rationale, is to educate folks. It's not just that we don't like bamboo, but we want to help you as well not plant something that is invasive and may crowd out all the other plants that you like. So I think that was one of the key takeaways. The other thing I'll mention is the previous ordinance that the BOC was not a fan of also had something about burning. So we took that out of there, no burning. Regarding fines, we didn't impose a fine, but said it would be subjective to the township. So we think these are all things that the BOC will find acceptable and hopefully won't be too burdensome on our residents.
Looks great.
Okay.
Somebody going to go to the BOC and champion this and present it? Because I remember that was our other concern, that somebody needed.
That's what we did before.
Yes.
And at that point, they looked at it and said, it's a little bit too detailed, a little bit too harsh for the residents. Let's soften it. So here we did, I softened it one night, brought it back to you folks, and I feel it's a good mix for what we're looking for and also fair to the residents.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'm
It looks
happy
good
to
to
do
me.
that at the next BOC
Please.
meeting. But
Thanks,
I just
Eileen.
want to, yeah, sure. Joe, James, any questions?
Sounds great.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, great. Okay, we'll take this to the BOC at their next meeting when they can fit us in on the agenda. Okay. Okay, so that covers goals number 1, 2. I think we covered 3 when we just talked about communication, so I think we're good there. Okay, we had an action item follow-up on number 4 regarding managing the shade tree fund, and this was a request to confirm with Bill White why $25,000 wasn't transferred into the fund in 2018. I speculated and I confirmed with Bill that that was correct, that basically it's because we don't spend the amount of money we have in the budget to begin with, so the township said, hey, we don't need to give you another $25,000 just to increase your balance, which sounds pretty reasonable to me. I'm glad they used those funds elsewhere, so that's the reason.
So it was like use it or lose it?
Yeah, we've been carrying a balance. That's why, yeah, so we have about $100,000 this year, and so that's where I think between the spring planting, the fall planting, the bill that we pay for the arborist, for John's services, yeah, we want to make sure, right, the ads, we want to make sure we consume that $100,000 and make good use of it.
My fee do not come out of that shade
They're,
portion, just a little section.
Yeah.
Shade trees, most of the stuff is permitted for it. Most of the time the developers are paying my hourly rate.
yeah, it must just be a portion, because it's in there. The bulk of it is all trees, or can be used for trees, I should say. We have about 80,000 to use for trees.
Or
Plu-
educational.
All right, or educational.
Which I think we need to really start promoting.
Okay. You mean education of the residents, or education of ourselves, or?
Education for the residents, obviously. Awareness. Talking about the invasives.
Yep.
I think we need to start putting some capital towards that, whether it's lectures, where we pay somebody to come in and do a little lecture for residents, invite them to come on behalf of the shade tree.
Yep.
Maybe tree tenders for people that want to sign up and do that.
Yep.
I know Gretchen and Laura have been very diligent about assisting in that program. And they will help pay for some of those
Yes.
activities, which is
Yep.
great. So I think we need to start, planting trees is great, but we also have to have the educational component as well.
Yep, that sounds like a great idea. And then just a reminder, we also have approximately 20 trees coming from the Radnor Conservancy, which they're going to donate to us and we can plant. So that's, you won't see that in dollars, but that's part of our overall budget as well.
And they just donated 12 trees yesterday
Yes.
that we planted at Hartford Park.
Yep,
And it was
as
it
part
was
of
it was
Arbor
it was a
Day.
good turnout of like 6 or 7 people, and
Yep.
we had the state forester there, and it was good.
Yeah.
Got all the
that's
trees planted within an hour.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so then the next one was item 5, partner with our stakeholders, and this was the Wayne Business District. And in some ways, I think we covered this. This was regarding what trees do we want to recommend to be planted downtown as part of the large WBA revival project. And I think, actually, I shouldn't say, we know that we want a diversified mix of trees, not all pear trees, and I think everybody's aligned there. But I would suggest perhaps we wait until we see their plans, if that's in like the June timeframe, and make recommendations then. Is there any early thoughts about what would be good urban trees, good street trees along the township?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I'll
Right.
go up there someday
Oh,
and take a
that'd be
look
great.
and see what the sites,
Yeah, James, I
see
think,
what type of trees would work good, and then come report back to you guys. And then that would help out.
yeah, I think that's excellent. And I think also from our street tree survey, we also have a list of, hey, these are the trees that are healthy and doing very well along our streets. These are the trees that are not doing so healthy, or not doing so well along our streets. So I think we can work off of that as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough, I think, to find trees unless, John, do you have some good ideas because I'm sure they just want upright trees. There's not much room between the
Yeah.
buildings.
So to me, it should be a little bit more detailed than just picking a selection, because there's a lot of people there that rely on the front of their office for their sole marketing. So we don't want to have a large branched, broad canopy. We'd have something more narrow, V-shaped, such as a Zelkova.
Right.
Some areas want some shade, maybe near the restaurant. They have a little patio set, so maybe like a large black gum would go there. I think it has to be case by case, always, considering that 10% rule, no more than 10% of one species. I think they were all pairs that were there currently. So yeah, I mean, there's a thought process has to go into it for sure, with a mix of shade, texture, some winter interest, obviously, and some color.
There's some other interests and needs from the business district to have lighted trees as part of the, so are we taking that into consideration, which ones?
I saw that on Steve's notes that there was
Okay.
lighting involved in that.
And, lighting from the.
Uplighting,
Yeah.
yes. Mhm.
And then the other question is, you don't want to just clear cut them all? Do we do it in stages? Because we're going to lose a lot of shade quickly.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work. Obviously, as Steve mentioned, that's going to go out to bid.
Yep.
Because it'll obviously be over that $25,000 mark. I think if they do it in stages, the cost could be pretty exorbitant just because they're breaking it up. I think they're looking at the cheapest cost to get it all done in one shot, removals, and then fall immediately, start the planting and mitigation. But it has to be told that, they're going to lose that shade, and they're not going to capture those benefits for at least 5 to 10 years. So the existing shade that currently exists is going to be diminished by 100%, and they're not going to, gain that canopy coverage back or that shade benefit for another 5 to 10 years at a minimum.
Have you walked the business district a lot?
About 20 times, yep.
Yep, okay, you have then. So is there anything that you would suggest that shouldn't come out?
No, I mean, the trees have not been maintained. There's
Yeah.
issues, there's infrastructure issues. They're lifting up the sidewalks. The species palette is poor. No, it definitely needs to be,
Redone.
yeah, renovation is in need, for
Okay.
sure. I totally concur with them, absolutely.
I do think it's, yeah, but I must admit, I do think it's worth looking at, could we save some and plant new? Because it would seem a shame to clear cut everything, especially when we are the shade tree committee. That seems like an odd recommendation.
Well, I will
Yeah.
say this, that the WBOD does not want our approval. They want our help and recommendation, but they want to have it done. So,
I think it's going to, Eileen, I totally concur with you. I think it's going to come down to a cost issue.
Yeah. No, and I'm not suggesting approval, but I am suggesting that we think of, hey, what's best for the township in regards to the investment? And I am hard pressed to think residents would be happy if you clear cut the downtown and start over anew. There's probably some mix where some of the trees could be deemed as structurally sound, healthy, and yes, this was a good choice whenever that choice was made many years ago. It would be, I'm hard pressed to think 100% of them were poor choices and not healthy at the present time.
they haven't been taken care of. So
They're all,
we're talking about big trees, though, replacements, though, right? So,
Absolutely. I mean, they're not going to be partially re-whips, but they're going to be 2.5, 3-inch caliber trees.
That's,
Which are going to equate to anywhere from, depending on species, 14 to 16 feet height for a shade tree, 12 to 14 for an ornamental, depending on the species.
okay, so that actually, those, the park that's over by, the parking lot by Baskin Robbins? That, they did that park from nothing, and they grew pretty quickly because they were huge to begin with. So I think that's the idea, right, is to replace with some substantial 3-inch, so it will grow in pretty.
And that goes back to what I was speaking of in terms of education. So that really has to be advertised, the reasons why. I mean, the association members there understand the reason why they're doing it. But the consumers who are coming there don't understand it. And that educational piece to the Radnor residents will help alleviate any of that,
But I would assume that will be the WBA taking that on since this is their project.
Probably not, if we're funding it and we're managing it and we're doing the contracting, I think.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The WBA in conjunction with the township.
Yes,
It wouldn't be
correct.
us, the Shade Tree
Yeah.
Committee doing
We,
that.
we,
That's what I
we,
mean.
we need to
That's-
assist on that, yep.
They're
Yeah.
looking to us for what are good trees, what's going to work, but the WBA is asking the township to do the project and
Yeah,
pay
I'm aware
and
of
pay
that.
for it and take care of it. So that's the biggest thing, because our overlay district is in much need of a facelift. And
Correct, but I would say also that it's not just where existing trees are, it's where there's large bare spots. So I do think they should think a little bit more broadly. So that's likely to be my input when the plans come here.
And all
For
the trees are,
advice, since we're not giving approval.
all the trees are Bradford pears too, aren't they? Or are they all pears?
No, there's some
Most of them are, I think
markings.
there's a couple old Sephoras over there, if I remember.
But it's mainly
Yeah,
pears, right?
mainly pears, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that's great, James. If you have some time, if you can take a look, and probably Matt as well.
Yeah, I mean, if they're pears, they should.
Yeah, but I do think there are
Okay.
other trees there on some of the larger corners where there's open space. But near all the stores, you're right, I think the majority of them are pears. Yeah. Okay.
You're talking that the WBA is going to do the educational piece on this. You're not looking to Shade Tree to do
Meaning
anything
the
on that.
township.
I think we need to manage the ad.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, the WBA is not looking to do the education piece. They'll add it to newsletters and advertisement, but it's not, they don't know anything about trees. They're looking to us to, who know.
Talking about the overall project, when they see, as Eileen points out, all these trees are going away,
Right, yes.
is that going to, who's going to educate about that?
It's going to be a joint effort, but it,
With WBA and Township, not me doing awareness for Shade Tree?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Just
that
want to make sure.
Education sounds like it's not the Shade Tree Committee, because it's not our project. Yeah. Yeah.
Not just us, yeah.
absolutely. Thank
Okay.
you, Ginny, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks for clarifying, guys.
Yep, yep. I'm just making some notes. Okay.
Because there will be questions.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Okay, let's see.
And the pear trees
That's it.
invasive species too, so.
Yeah, it is. It recently came out on the invasive list, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, I agree, I agree.
3 weeks.
Okay, so folks, that completes what we wanted to cover under the goals in bold. So let me is there anything else under the goals before I leave this topic and go back to the main agenda? Okay, very good. Okay, so now we're down to hazardous trees, number 10. So it looks like we have basically 6 trees that were removed. John, any comments on these trees?
No, I mean, they were all, you're talking about the hazard trees,
Correct, yep.
Yeah, they were all risk-related. The turkey oak, unfortunately, which was the coolest tree of them all, which you don't see a lot in Radnor, had a big decay spot, and unfortunately could not be saved. The rest of it will die back with their older trees.
I know. And the one on Glen Mary, it doesn't have the size, ash, black pine, and Norway maple. Do you know if any of them were heritage trees?
Oh, no, they weren't heritage trees at all. They actually, they were on there, but none of them were heritage trees. I don't know why they were even on there.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
And one was an invasive Norway maple.
Yes.
And the black pine was completely dead.
okay. Okay, good. Okay, so then on to number 11, trees removed by the township. We have this just for information. And then after that, we're down to public participation, contractors list. Any questions there?
Can we go back to the hazardous trees removed by the township?
Sure.
So I'm cheered to see that on the agenda. So were there any that
I'm not involved in those. That would be for either projects or a tree that has. These are trees that relate to a project or that have failed and are, fell over or were causing damage. We had a couple trees fall on the actual trail, so they would be counted as removal, even though they were already were on the ground.
Okay, and you
they-
don't see those,
no.
John, or you don't mark them?
No,
or-
that's Steve McNeil that handles
Right.
that part.
Okay,
Yep.
because I had just a question, as it came up with the trees that fell on the comfort station at Enki,
Yep,
that we never even saw it, not that I don't trust
yep.
the township,
Correct.
but I think it would be important for us, for our goals and our education, as we keep moving forward, that we should know.
So, and that's a great question. So what happened was the tree fell on a Saturday. It was cleaned up Saturday afternoon. Sunday I went out. Bob Z asked me to go out and look at a few other trees. We found about 14 trees that were really bad. When they came down, Bob Z and staff went out and took pictures, and most of the trees were completely hollow and risk related. So there was 14 out of, I think there was 125 trees in that area. So 14 is not bad, and these were trees that would have reached the ball field, the concession stand, or even the dugout, so.
Well, I believe it was a Parks and Rec meeting that we talked about this and commented about it, which any tree that you tell us that is hazardous should come down and the township takes care of it. But I think as a board, as a shade tree, we probably want to have the count, just like we have
Right.
the township trees that are residence trees.
Yeah.
I mean, do you agree or not?
I do, but I think we normally have that, because I think that's how we put together the list last year for the budget.
Like 80 parks on here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's on here.
okay,
Right.
Park on all the sides, they're right there.
perfect,
Yeah.
okay. I just,
If it's at a park, it's always on here. We just don't have a lot that grow in the park. That's why
Right.
you never see it.
right. Yeah, just in terms of communication, that is why I serve on this committee full-time, is because I feel it's important to have the liaison between Parks and Rec, Shade Tree, and because we have trees in our parks. So that was just something that I was interested in and that we didn't really know about.
Oh, okay.
And that when all those 14 trees had to be taken out of Enki.
Yep.
Yeah,
But I
they-
think that's how you're informed, is normally it's here on the agenda.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't they were all hazardous trees. They would have hurt somebody if they didn't come down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then they put them,
Yeah, and I would expect to see a lot more, and I say that because, like, I can tell Steve McNeilis in Public Works, they took out a lot either the very end of last year or the beginning of this year, and then just based on our the survey that we're doing of the street trees, Matt has identified a lot of hazardous trees, and that was actually the biggest ask in our budget last year. It didn't have to come from the Shade Tree Committee, but it had to come somewhere from the township to remove all these hazardous trees, because we do want folks to be proactive, and if they're in our right-of-way, we want to remove them, and if they're in a residence property, then we want to find a way to notify them. Like, hey, by the way, you have a hazardous tree you may not know of, may not be aware of. So,
one other.
yeah, so I think we're going to see more.
I was just gonna say, if we have some extra trees, since we're taking 14 away, could the
That
parks,
was what-
Enki, do something and
Yeah, is
plant some
Enki
there?
on the list?
They're on my list.
Yeah.
Okay, good, yeah, perfect. I have no issue, and I totally trust everything that John does and the township. I just thought, for information's sake and education, that it would keep communication clear.
Right. Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. And that's where, even in picking out the parks for where the new trees will go, it would be good to also identify parks where there aren't vine problems, because it would be a shame to plant new trees and have them overtaken by vines. So we can keep that in mind too. And Claire, you being our liaison to the parks, you can make us aware of, what are good parks to plant in or make the investment in. So we'll look to you for that guidance.
Happy to work on that.
Okay, super. So anything else before we close the meeting? Okay, great,
The
thanks.
schools,
Yeah,
just
go
so
ahead,
everybody
James.
knows, the schools, my daughter's in second at Ethan, and I think every student got it, maybe not, but they gave away trees to everybody, to all the
Oh,
students that were
nice.
yay tall.
Yeah.
I think it was a great idea.
Oh, that's super.
Yeah, so,
And which school is that?
Ethan,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Program, correct, yeah.
Oh, great.
Do you know if all the schools got it, or?
A lot of schools did do it, yeah. I mean, you have to sign up for it. I mean, you have to pay for the product, but you do.
We never paid for it.
Somebody pays for it, either comes through a
Yeah,
grant, yeah,
somebody,
somebody's, yeah.
It was pretty cool, though.
Through a membership, yes.
Thought everybody would like to know.
No, that's great. That's really
So,
good to know,
lot of
James.
trees.
Thanks. Okay, thanks, everybody. Have a nice night.